Welcome to another episode of Redistricting for Racial Justice, presented by More Equitable Democracy. My name is Bill Ball, and this is episode 6 of our Intro to GIS and Census Data series. In this episode, we're going to talk about projections, what they are. We're going to look at the Mercator map. I'm going to do my best to try to simplify them for you, and then I'm going to show you how to set them within ArcMap. So, projections are a little bit complicated. I don't even really fully understand them myself, to be honest with you. But as long as you know one or two things, that's all you really need to know to get by. And certainly enough to make the map we're going to make in this series. Now, think about what we're doing with the map we're trying to create. We are taking a round surface, the Earth, the globe, and we are projecting them on a computer screen, a flat surface. Now, you can't just rip apart the globe, flatten it out, and everything's going to work. It just doesn't work like that. That's where kind of projections come in. Projections are essentially distorting a map, distorting a three-dimensional surface to where it looks good on a two-dimensional surface. And that's basically it. So I want to bring up this map here. Now, if you're as old as I am, and you've probably seen this map in front of your blackboard in middle school, this is the Mercator map. This is kind of the most famous projection of the Earth's surface. Now, boy, this map looks great. You know, like everything is nice and clean. You know, I can see the whole world on this flat surface. Everything looks great. The only problem with that is that this is not a true representation of what the Earth looks like. For example, you've got Russia over here. It looks nice and huge, and it is huge. But Russia is basically half the size of Africa, but you couldn't tell that by looking at this map. And especially Greenland. Greenland's pretty darn tiny, certainly smaller than Africa, but you wouldn't know that by looking at this map. And so what's going on here, this is where projections come in. Yes, this map looks nice and great, but you can't make this map without it being kind of distorted. And specifically, the further you get away from the equator, right here, the more distorted the map's going to be. So the further north you get up here, the more distorted, the more bigger it's going to be actually in real life. So everything up here is way bigger than it should be, and everything by the equator is smaller in comparison. And I've got this example right here, which shows you the true size on this right side, the true size of Greenland when you compare it to Africa. I mean, you could probably fit a dozen of those within the actual continent of Africa. Okay, so that's a quick summary. Let's get our map that we created in the last episode open. And as you can see, this is distorted. This is, I believe, I'm not 100%, but I believe this is the Mercator projection of Ohio. This is not actually what Ohio looks like. This is distorted. And so here's my best way of trying to simplify setting projections. This is not accurate. Don't quote me on this, but it works in my brain, okay? And the way I think about projections is when you're setting, again, this is the Mercator projection we're looking at. Not great. We want to fix that. What projection do we want to use? We got a number of options. But what I do is I think about a satellite up in the air, okay, and it's honing down on the surface that we want to look at, right? And so what projections are, when I think about it, is setting that satellite to be right over the state of Ohio, and then it's going to look good. So it doesn't make much sense, but I'm going to show you here in a second. Here's how you set projections to make it look good. Is you're going to right-click on Layers over here. Okay? You want to right-click on it, and then you want to go to Properties. Okay? And then all you have to do is type the state that you're looking at. But before I go into Ohio, what I want to do is type in, for example, Washington State. Okay, which is where I live. So I type in Washington here. Okay, you're going to have to open up a couple of these dialog boxes. So open up Projected, open up State Plane, and then open up NAD, 1983 U.S. feet. And you got a couple of options for Washington here. So what I'm doing here, going back to my not great example, is if I set this to Washington, what I'm doing, basically, again, it's not accurate, but is I'm setting that satellite over the state of Washington. But I'm looking at Ohio. So let's go ahead and just hit Apply and see what that looks like. Now, that doesn't look like Ohio. I mean, maybe it does. It looks a little less fat, but now it's way distorted right here. So if you think about that satellite hovering over the state of Washington, but you're looking way off in the distance of Ohio, it's not going to look great, right? And so what we want to do now is just tell, hey, you know what? We're in the state of Ohio. I want to hover that satellite right over Ohio so it looks good. Again, you go down here and you go to open up projecting coordinate systems, open up state plane, NAD 1983 US feet, and they give you a couple of options. You can pick whichever you want to like better. But let's go ahead and set this to Ohio and see what happens. There we go. Now that's the Ohio that I like. It's not distorted. It's nice and flat looking, and everything looks good. Okay, and so that wraps up this episode of our series. In the next episode, we're going to continue building on this map, and we're going to talk about selecting features. So thank you for joining. If you have any comments, please leave them in the chat box below, and we'll see you in the next episode. Thanks for joining.